Welcome to Inner Alchemy with George Stubbe, Trauma, Healing and Plant Medicine, the podcast where we explore what it means to heal, grow and transform from the inside out. In these special interview episodes, I sit down with artists, with healers, with visionaries to talk about their personal journeys, the shadows they have faced, and the wisdom they have gathered. From altered states to everyday rituals, these conversations are an invitation to remember who we truly are. I'm George Stubbe, a psychologist and musician specializing in the trauma-informed work with plant medicines and with somatic psychology. Welcome to this podcast. I'm super pleased to welcome Adrian Freedman today, and he's a composer, a multi-instrumentalist whose life in music has been a journey across cultures and traditions, from jazz and classical beginnings in the UK to deep study in Japan and to the immersion into the sacred songs of the Amazon. And on his website he writes that through this journey he has been naturally drawn to the music of sacred traditions, the music of ritual and ceremony, meditation and devotion, mountain temples and forest clearings. It is music played in the stillness of dawn and the magic of the full moon, music of transformative power that penetrates the veil, a transcendental acoustic music of the heart. I'm super happy that we have this opportunity to talk today, Adrian.
Yeah, me too. Good to be here.
And maybe as a first question, I'm curious, like, what role music plays in your own healing, in your own evolution, on your own path of that.
Yeah, so I grew up, I'm 63 now, I grew up in the 1960s and 70s. The 70s mainly, when I was a sort of teenager and coming of age. And in that time, music was always really central to my life. From a very young age, I started playing the piano when I was 5 years old, because when I first went to school, there was a piano in the classroom and they couldn't keep me off the piano. So they suggested to my mom I should have lessons. And from that point on, my whole life revolved around music. I had piano lessons and then the violin. And then I became really obsessed about the trumpet with jazz music. And so growing up, I played in orchestras, I played in bands, and then I went to music college and studied classical music. And I wanted to be a composer. And I was interested in all different kinds of music, really. Folk music, world music, jazz music, classical music. I was just really thirsty for any kind of music. And in those days, we didn't have any internet. And also a lot of music that we listen to now on the radio or that we find in music stores was not available. So you'd have to dig deep to find exotic sounds in record libraries, in various off-the-road places. And so there was this deep immersion in music. But what went along with that was being a performer. And I never felt comfortable being a performer on stage. It always felt awkward for me. And I could never reconcile these two things, being a musician and being a performer. Because I was always interested in writing music and arranging music and recording music too. And in those areas, you're not performing. But there was always this expectation that you're going to get up on stage, you're going to sell tickets for a gig, you're going to be, having that kind of role. But I think I always, deep down, I always had this feeling that music had a different function for me, and it was more connected to healing. And that slowly became clear. It revealed itself very slowly. But looking back over the years, I remember that when I first became deeply immersed in classical music, when I was like 12, 13, 14 years old, it was always the slow movements that I was drawn to. Like if you have a symphony and there's 4 movements, or a concerto or a sonata, you have a fast movement and you have, different kinds of musical moods. I always went straight to the adagios and the lentos and the largos and the really slow pieces. And I didn't realize this at the time, but looking back, I realized that this was my first kind of experience of seeking out music for healing, because I grew up in quite a chaotic family environment. And there was a lot of bullying and difficult energies at school, and the outside world just was quite a hostile environment to grow up in. And so I developed this kind of way of retreating to an inner world through music. And in that inner world, those soft, gentle, rounded, very beautifully layered sounds would provide a kind of escape for me, where everything was nurturing and everything was just kind of unfolding beautifully in time. Yeah. So I think that was my first experience with music as healing. And then that just sort of motivated me, I guess, to always seek out music that had this sense of being a kind of inner sanctuary. And then it was later, when I was in my 30s, that I became aware through other interests, through spiritual practices and other kinds of things that I was becoming connected to. I became aware that there's this other whole world of music, which is far away from the stage and from being a performer. And it's music for devotional practice, Sufi music or kirtan music. It's music for meditation. It's music for sound healing, or music for ceremony and ritual. And so I discovered this whole very rich other sort of parallel world that I began to explore. And my sort of horizons expanded beyond simply seeking out different sounds and instruments, but to seeking out these kinds of settings where musicians had this other kind of role. And my own personal healing has always been a strong theme in that journey. But slowly over the years, I also became to identify more with the role as a musician of being able to provide music that could be a healing inspiration for other people.
Wow. Yeah, it's so beautiful to hear how you say, like, your own healing has been really connected with that journey. And can you maybe describe a bit, like, what kind of like inner challenges you met on this journey, or that you had to face on this way?
Well, I guess there's different categories of challenges that we face. I think most people that I meet anyway seem to carry some kind of trauma or burden, which at some point demands to be looked at and understood and acknowledged. And sometimes it's not so simple as just identifying a difficult part of ourselves and then bringing it into the light. Sometimes the invitation is to go deeper into the shadow areas before we can truly understand what it is that we're carrying and track it back to the source, which may be some early life experience, or it may be some kind of karmic energy. That there's this sense of some process of integrating and purifying the kind of shadow energies that we all carry, which manifest in different ways. And so that's one kind of area where I've been constantly seeking for healing, peace, liberation, understanding on a personal level. And then I guess another area is more like a general sense of the kind of existential angst that we carry of being in this broken, wounded, fragmented world that seems to be heading in crazy directions. And how do we respond to that? How do we acknowledge that we are part of this collective consciousness which is so damaged? And how do we understand how we can heal what is ours and contribute in a healthy way to the bigger picture? And there's this yearning of the soul to find answers to the big questions in life about why these kinds of very difficult, challenging situations of conflict and arise, and so, and then I guess the third area is just everyday life and things that happen unexpectedly from moment to moment, and how we learn to hold ourselves in the face of those everyday challenges. So in all of those areas, I found music to be a very special resource, because music is this kind of, on the one hand, it's this universal language which cuts through culture and language and history to reveal that we all share the same basic set of emotions which can be expressed through sound.
Yeah.
And then in another way, music, the kind of music that I've been drawn to, it acts as a kind of portal to help us to access certain areas of ourself, like the hidden mysteries, the teachings, the inner healer or transcendental truths, which may remain slightly veiled and out of touch. And then we can have different experiences in life that help us to have a personal connection with these sort of universal teachings. But music has a particular way of helping us to open into that kind of field. I didn't give you any specific examples, but this is my sort of general feeling of how we all carry these personal and collective challenges, which provide a constant source of motivation to keep moving forwards in the direction of healing. And music is such a powerful ally on that journey.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's like, I actually just a few days ago had like a medicine journey for myself. So I participating. And yeah, all those layers strongly came up. Especially like the layer of like that you mentioned of how to be in this world where so much things are like going into really questionable directions, and like having to be a part of that somehow. And participating in a system that is like where it's just really difficult to even see like what is the right thing to do here or what not, and like what, in my perspective, like what consequences does my action have? Just like buying something, in my opinion, like just buying a piece of clothing, like not knowing exactly what is connected to that. Or like food, and not knowing exactly like who is actually benefiting here, and like how do I maybe unconsciously support like things that I really don't want to support. Yeah, it's quite a
it's a big
one.
challenge, because on the one hand we need to be available to learn new things and have our understandings broken open to fresh understandings and fresh perspectives, so that our sense of awareness of the world we live in can be constantly deepening and refreshing itself. And then at the same time, there's this, as you say, very sort of grounded need to understand how to respond in moment to moment, not simply having a set of understandings, but really how to live and incarnate. But as we're chatting, and I was just reflecting on your previous question and my answer, I'd like to give you 3 examples of how I feel that music has helped me in these kinds of aspects of the healing journey.
Yeah, that would be wonderful.
So I think one area is in the realm of feeling, of emotion, because we all carry so much, and sometimes we don't know really how to express what we're feeling, or we don't feel safe enough to be really vulnerable all the time in all places with all people.
Yeah.
And sometimes we have a sense of something that wishes to be expressed, but we're not quite sure what it is. We may feel sometimes a kind of heaviness or sadness. We're not quite
Mm.
sure where that comes from. And in this sense, music can have an extremely powerful effect of soothing the soul, opening the heart, and providing a safe space within the heart. We don't need to go and create a safe space in terms of a particular location, but just within ourselves. Music can give us the sense that it's okay to feel what we're feeling and can help to unpack things. And then just purely through music, we can have a sense that whatever it is that we're carrying that may feel mysterious or blocked or resistant to change or confronting is somehow allowed to move. The flowing nature of music allows things to move. And then within that movement, we make ourselves available to transformation.
Mm.
And the transformational aspect of healing is absolutely key.
Yeah.
So that's one area. Another area is related to the instrument I play, the Japanese shakuhachi flute, which we can talk more about later.
Yeah, I would love to.
So the shakuhachi flute comes from a Zen tradition in Japan. It's a very unique instrument. And one of the unique things about the shakuhachi is that although we play very beautiful melodies on this instrument, the practice from which it evolved was a contemplative practice that was done in monastic traditions. Zen monks would use this instrument as part of their meditation. And so the instrument was never intended to be used as part of a performance. It was more of an introspective journey.
Mm-hmm.
And where this leads us is ultimately to silence. And the beautiful sounds and phrases and melodies of the traditional shakuhachi music are intended to actually open to the silence that follows the sound. And that helps to bring us to a kind of expanded state of consciousness where we're connected to a place of stillness within ourselves. And within the context of Buddhist teachings or other spiritual teachings, we come to understand that this point of stillness within ourselves is also the center of the universe and has a universal quality to it. And so using music, specifically the shakuhachi, to journey through the different layers of thoughts, sensations, feelings, memories, narratives to reach this point of stillness and emptiness is a very specific aspect of music making that I've been very strongly drawn to.
Wow.
And we can talk more about that because the shakuhachi is a fascinating instrument. But the third area that I wanted to mention where music has this healing context is medicine songs, which can help us to connect to spirit. They help us to connect to our own veiled, profound, inner sense of knowing, which goes beyond the conditioned mind of what we've learned through society, but something much deeper than that. And these medicine songs, they connect to some kind of primal truths. And also they help us to connect to the elements, to nature, and to our ancestors, and to the cosmos, and to the universal aspects of how we connect as a family, as brothers and sisters, as fellow human beings.
Mm.
And the medicine songs, they have this very unique way of speaking directly to you as an individual, as if you're hearing a direct communication from source. And at the same time, opening up to a collective field of understanding. So yeah, that's 3 different areas in my musical life where music has this powerful healing function.
That's so beautiful. And yeah, like I guess the medicine songs are also connected then to your experiences with like for example, plant medicine in South America.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct? Is it fair to say?
Yeah, that's correct. So I'll explain to you how I first became connected to this world of plant spirit
Please.
plant spirit medicine ceremonies and music. So as I mentioned before, when I was young, I was very, very thirsty for all different kinds of music. And I guess I was about 25 years old, and I was living in London and working as a musician and playing avant-garde classical music and Baroque music and all kinds of things. I was playing keyboards in a band as well. And then I heard somebody play the shakuhachi, the Japanese flute. It was actually not a Japanese music setting. It was a free jazz music collective. They used to meet once a week, and people would bring strange instruments and people would improvise, and it was all very kind of like free form. And one day this guy turned up with this instrument that I'd never heard before, and it just blew me away. And I went to have a chat with him, and he showed me the instrument. I'll show it to you.
Yeah, please. That would be fantastic.
So this is the shakuhachi.
Yeah. Beautiful.
As you can see, it's just got 4 holes on the front and 1 on the back.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like me to play a little bit for you?
I would love that. That would be so amazing. Yeah, please.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's so wonderful. It's like really, really, really peaceful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So noticeable immediately.
When I first heard this instrument, it just blew me away. And I thought, I have to learn how to play this. But actually it's very difficult. It's notoriously difficult to play. You just have this edge that you blow over. It's a very fine edge.
Yeah.
And in the beginning, when you try to play, it's like this. No matter how much you try, you just can't find the sound.
Is it similar, a bit like to Banzuri? I mean, I know that Banzuri is like more like to the side, but like I also found that really.
Yeah, I think all flutes are hard to get a sound out of in the beginning, but I was already a professional flute player of different kinds of flutes when I picked up the shakuhachi.
Okay, yes.
I couldn't get a sound out of it. But to cut a long story short, this guy that I met that night, he began to give me lessons. He helped me to find an instrument. It wasn't easy in those days.
Mm-hmm.
It was back in the 1980s. And then at a certain point, I realized I needed to go to Japan to find a Japanese master and learn properly. So that's what happened. And that was a whole story in itself, how I got there and how I found my teacher. But anyway, I found an amazing teacher. I was so fortunate. And just by a series of chance moments, I ended up with a very, very special teacher. And I studied with him for 8 years. I lived in Kyoto, became very deeply immersed in the spiritual life there, temples, meditation, all the different aspects of Japanese art and culture and spiritual practice. Had a profound effect on me, as you might expect. And at a certain point into that 8-year journey, 5 years in, I met some Brazilian guys from the Amazon forest who were traveling around Japan giving medicine ceremonies. And I was not looking for this. I had no interest in it. I'd never heard of it. I didn't have an interest in shamanism or in plant spirit, in ceremonies, in anything of this nature. But I really liked these guys. I made an amazing connection with them. And so they invited me to come to their ceremony, and that just changed my life all over again. Because as you may have experienced yourself, and many people have, once you have your first cup of that brew, nothing's really ever the same again. And it took me to a place where I became deeply, deeply curious about what was the source of this tradition. And so although I was living in Japan, I went to Brazil. I went to visit these people at their home in the Amazon forest. And that started another whole aspect of my journey. That was 30 years ago. Wow. And since then, I've done thousands of ceremonies and spent a lot of time in Brazil and worked in many places with many people. And I've received my own medicine songs. I have 180 songs that I received now over the last 30 years. And that's just opened up into a whole different area of my life where initially there were these two parallel paths. There was my musical path and then my medicine path. But the point where I am now sharing with you, these two paths have slowly become one path. And now all the music projects that I do and all the music collaborations are basically an extension, an expression of this idea of music as medicine.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing to hear like this journey from like recording, performing, and then music as medicine.
Mm-hmm. I think
feel this. You go first.
Yeah, so the heart of the shakuhachi tradition is the Zen teachings. And on the surface, it could be thought that the world of Zen teachings and the world of Japanese temples and this very rarefied world of Zen is a very long way away from plant spirit medicine, where you've got the jungle, you've got the rainforest, and you've got all this dynamic, animated energy of the South American spiritual practices. And you've got a lot of people singing, loud voices, you've got dancing, you've got different kinds of healings and incorporations, and you've got drums and maracas and all the sounds of the forest. But actually what I came to understand was the very profound connection between the immersion that I'd had in Zen teachings and the immersion that I then had in plant spirit medicine traditions. And there's lots of things that interlink these two paths. One thing is in Buddhist practice, there's a talk of the bodhisattva vow. The bodhisattva is an awakened being who, instead of dissolving into nirvana and eternal bliss in the cosmic consciousness, decides to turn around and face back to the world. You might have an image of someone who spent all their life meditating to the point where they just have to take one more step to dissolve into eternal nirvana. And then they hear the cries of the world and they realize they can't take that last step. Because, as it says in the Mahayana Bodhisattva vow, it's not possible for one person to become enlightened without the whole world becoming enlightened. And so then the work becomes about how you go back to face the world and offer your life in service to relieve suffering and offer comfort. But the difference between a bodhisattva and someone else is that the bodhisattva feels all the suffering very deeply, but they don't suffer themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And in the medicine path, this ideal of the bodhisattva path is also at the heart of the journey, which starts with a personal journey of healing and then evolves to a point where you're not coming to ceremony each time to heal your own traumas, but you're there to act as a vessel or a channel or a container for that medicine that wants to manifest through human beings, because it sits there pregnant with potential in the leaves and the vines of nature, but it needs human beings to drink it and engage with it so as to activate the healing current, which then articulates the next steps and then needed to be taken by individual people on their own healing paths. And so there's a link there between these bodhisattva traditions in the Buddhist practice and in the ideal of the participant on a medicine healing journey. And this idea that the awakening we experience as individuals is for the benefit of all beings. And the medicine music itself expresses this because it carries the healing impulse beyond the individual into the collective.
Yeah.
And then there's another way that these traditions link, which is that the Zen practice, and especially the music that I was playing on the shakuhachi, it's a way of cultivating deep listening.
Yeah.
And deep listening helps to restore balance. And then the inner balance that we find in ourselves through cultivating the capacity to really listen without reacting and to make space, this restorative aspect of sacred sound also ripples out beyond the individual, because as individuals take on the responsibility of personal healing, then communities start to heal. And that ripples out to the kind of broadest levels. I think another way that these traditions overlap is because at the heart of the Buddhist teachings, the very foundation of the Buddhist teachings is a confrontation with suffering.
Yeah.
The Buddha had these four noble truths that are like the pillars of all the teachings that followed. And the first one of those truths is suffering exists, not as something to escape from or deny, or to just click your fingers and transform instantly, but as a doorway to growth and awakening. So suffering becomes a teacher. And there's a link there with plant spirit medicine sessions too, because we're asked to confront some pretty deep, dark, challenging places in ourselves in order to bring unresolved issues to the surface to be integrated. And then from there, compassion naturally arises when suffering is fully witnessed. And so this sense of compassion for ourselves and for others is also a driving force in the medicine circles, rituals, and communities.
Yeah, that's so important. And I love how you just also mentioned that it's really at the heart of Buddhism, or like on the heart of a spiritual path. Because I see it quite often, at least from my perspective, my experience, that some people teach to just focus on spirit and the light, and they make this whole bypass of like the suffering or the pain or the trauma. And I find it really like misleading and unhealthy.
Yeah, and I think I understand what you mean. In all of the work that I've been doing over the years in a healing context, whether the sound healing or meditation or rituals and ceremonies, for a long time I carried this idea that we're learning to be light workers. But at a certain point, I completely switched my perspective and came to understand we're actually shadow workers. Because embracing discomfort is the path to truly understanding and cultivating compassion. It's only when we really, truly acknowledge and understand and embrace our own darkness that we're able to then understand and acknowledge that in the world around us.
Yeah.
And instead of then looking for outside solutions, we come to understand more and more that it's this inner journey of deep transformational healing that actually will allow us to cultivate the qualities we're seeking.
Yeah, beautiful. Like a wording that really resonates with me is like to go through the imprints into the blueprint, but not bypass the imprints.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm. And something I was wondering while you were sharing is like, what makes medicine music? If that can be answered at all.
Mm-hmm. Well, we can try. I think one thing to acknowledge is that plant spirit medicines and the music associated with them come from traditions that have been cultivated in places far away from Western culture for thousands of years, in the forests, in the mountains, in the hidden valleys, in the deserts. And we're now, on the one hand, gaining access to these communities and these traditions through the ability to travel, or also to meet people from those communities who are traveling in our societies. And so the way that we experience medicine music is firstly an encounter with these ancient traditions. But then, in my experience, it evolves into something else, because when you start to embody the principles of medicine music, such to the point that you're actually receiving your own songs, and your own inner medicine musician is being awakened, then you're not simply an observer, but you're actually actively participating in the evolution of that field of medicine music. So and when we look at what medicine music is, it has these two sides to it. There's the historical, ancestral, traditional aspect, and there's the way that it's unfolding in new forms, and it's playing a very active part in the general sense of awakening that is happening in so many places around the world today.
Yeah.
Medicine songs, I guess they, and any song attempts to tell a story. It can be literally a story, like a ballad with many verses, or it can just be an expression of a certain emotion. But medicine songs share these common themes of reconnection with nature, with Mother Nature, reconnection with the sun and the moon and the stars as our actual sort of true sense of who we are, where we came from, and the biggest perspective. And then to the environment we find ourselves in, the water, the air, the wind, the trees, the flowers, the elements. And so there's this strong energy contained in the medicine songs to reconnect with nature on the immediate sense and on the most expansive cosmic sense. And this impulse to reconnect with nature plays such an important role in the healing that we're all called to do, because it's the separation from nature which has caused so much confusion and madness in the world. And so the medicine songs act as a kind of like a bridge or a portal to this capacity to reconnect with nature. Another common theme of medicine songs is the theme of self-healing and communal healing. How we learn to be better versions of ourselves, and how that can then be manifested in our words and thoughts and actions with our brothers and sisters. A lot of the medicine songs, they're very directive, or they contain kind of guidances, or sometimes they can even be quite strong. They can almost be like containing messages that seem like they're kind of scolding and kind of warning to kind of pull us away from one path and help guide us into another path. And I think that in terms of the connection with nature, the songs also, they help us to realize that spirit of nature is our own true nature. And it's that separation from the spirit of nature that is our general sense of agony that we share as humans. And so the songs are helping us to become receptive
Mm-hmm.
to these messages that can then guide us back home.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
Mm.
I think medicine music also, it acts as a kind of, the medicine songs clear the path. They clear the way. It's like if you're in a forest and it's all overgrown with brambles and vines, and you have to clear the way, and you have a machete, you have a big knife to clear the way as you're going, as is very common in the forest. The songs have this kind of way of opening the inner space. They open the heart, they cleanse the mind, and they help to align our intentions with the highest good for ourselves and for all beings. And when we're aligned in that way, then that sense of alignment becomes a kind of compass that helps us to move forwards in a good way. And the medicine songs have a very strong role to play in that. The medicine songs, they remove the veil. They help us to see more clearly, and they help us to feel more clearly or more strongly and deeply. And the way that they do that is through the medium of music, because the act of listening in itself, I come to understand, firstly as a musician, but then in the broader context of spirituality and healing, I come to understand that the sense of listening is the purest channel we contain that guides us to that part of ourselves, which is always ready and waiting to receive wisdom and receive comfort and receive guidance and be part of a process of purification. And so there's this sense that the songs they contain like hidden mysteries. There's like the combination locks. They help to unlock whatever it is within us that is putting up barriers or resistances and wanting to be unlocked, so that we can take steps on this path of wholeness and unity with nature.
That's so beautiful. Yeah. And I'm curious to ask, Adrian, like, when you say like reconnection to nature, how can that look like on a, let's say, like very practical level? Just if somebody's listening to that and is asking himself, okay, how could that look like for my life to be more reconnected to nature again?
Mm-hmm. There's an effortlessness about nature. Sometimes nature expresses herself very strongly through hurricanes and storms, but there's also this sense of a kind of eternal presence in nature, which is a wonderful teacher. And that is combined with the sense that everything is perfect in nature, even though as I'm looking out of my window here, I can see lots of leaves growing on this kind of ivy, and every single leaf is different. Some of them are curled and they've got brown marks, bigger than others, different colors. And every single one is different, and yet they all interconnect as part of one plant, and that plant interconnects with all the other plants, and there's this sense of interdependence. There's this sense of a whole which is continually expressing itself through all of its parts. And so if we sit with nature, and we can start to feel a little bit of how we ourselves are also interdependent with all of our brothers and sisters, with our ancestors, with people very far away on the other side of the world, with the generations still to come, and with all aspects of the elemental, of the elements. And there's also a sense of perfection through imperfection in nature, because each flower looks so perfect when you look at the petals. And yet, if you just kind of step back from that perfection of the petals in the flower to the shape of the leaves and the forms of the branches and the things that have fallen on the forest floor and the things that are, there's this kind of organic, constantly shifting sense of reality, which is so different from the way we're conditioned to think that we must have everything lined up in neat little boxes of what we're doing and why we're doing it and how everything works and what's happening next. And this kind of roughness about nature, which has a purity about it in the way it expresses itself without seeking to resolve into some kind of idealized form of perfect beauty. And yet it is in itself perfectly beautiful. And we all have that nature ourselves. It's so difficult for us to accept the parts of ourselves that seem to be imperfect. You know, we may have regrets, or we may have longings, and we may have tendencies to lose our temper, or to become sad, or to become distracted, or to become hopeless, or to become too busy, or whatever. And yet running through all of this, there's an aspect of ourselves that is always reflecting that purity and presence of nature. And so being close to nature can help us to get closer to that aspect of ourselves.
Wonderful.
And it can be something very simple. It doesn't have to be a big trip to the wilderness. I think it's very powerful to just lay down on the earth, or to sit next to a tree and feel the wind. I mean, it sounds obvious, but I think for many people, they kind of put off these experiences until it's time to go to the beach, or it's time to go for a hike in the mountains, or it's time to have some kind of like specially framed experience that is going to be an immersion or an encounter with nature. But if you could find a way to every day just spend a few minutes with nature in that way, I think it starts to become apparent just how healing this kind of presence can become.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. And when you talked about like the imperfection in the perfection, I also had to think about like Japanese pottery, or like how they do like flowers, where there's always something that's like not perfect, and I always love that really much.
Yeah, in Japanese they have this phrase called wabi-sabi. I'm not sure if you've come across that. You know,
I know.
Wabi. Yeah. So it's this kind of asymmetry.
Yes.
And also the sense that when something becomes is used and becomes a little bit aged, it becomes more beautiful because it carries its own history. Yeah.
That's so amazing. And something that also stands out for me, and I'm curious how you see that, like looking on, just reading your biography, shows that you played so many different instruments in so many different contexts, in so many different cultures and countries. And it's so different from like, let's say, a classical musician who is like, quote unquote, only playing the violin for his whole life in an orchestra. And this idea that sometimes talked about that, you know, you have to focus on one thing and one thing only to become good at it, or however you want to phrase that. And I feel it's really refreshing that is to see your biography and like how many different things you have done.
Yeah, well, I guess there's two sides to that. One side is that I think I had this almost like a compulsion to just seek out all different forms of music, the whole world of music. It's like if you become interested in flowers and then you just want to, or birds, or, you know, you become interested in food or whatever it is, and then you just become thirsty to know more. But alongside of that sort of restlessness, I also am a person that has enjoyed going very, very deeply inside certain traditions. So when I picked up the shakuhachi, I didn't just learn to play a few notes and then go off and do my own thing. I went very, very deep inside that tradition, learning the traditional way of how those Zen pieces are transmitted from teacher to student across hundreds of years to preserve the tradition as a living tradition. And then similarly with the medicine world, when I first came across this path with the medicines, I realized it was something that was going to have a very profound impact on my life. And so I committed to going very deep within that as well. I spent several years traveling to all the medicine communities around Brazil that I was connected to. And I think there's always a danger in just kind of moving on the surface from one thing to another.
Yes.
If we don't truly give ourselves the opportunity to touch the roots of those traditions. But at the same time, I'm not somebody who's drawn to protect and preserve traditions as a thing in and of itself. I'm somebody who always is balancing a kind of creative impulse alongside this kind of respect and deep devotion to the traditions that I'd become connected to. So there's this kind of sense of a breaking wave or new branches on a tree, which are constantly offering new blossomings, new fruits and flowers through an evolving musical, spiritual, creative practice, and yet always rooted to the source. And what we find, I suppose one of the things that became apparent for me is that when I started to go deeply into different traditions, I became aware that the source is basically the same. I had this kind of moment one time, like an epiphany. I was sitting in a ceremony, and it was a very silent time in the unfolding of the ritual. And I suddenly had this realization that all of the music that human beings make comes from the one source, like a wellspring of sound. And I saw the music of Beethoven and Bach, and the music of Miles Davis, and the music of Indonesian gamelan orchestras, and the music of the simple songs of the forest. I saw all this music as streaming down from one source. And then as one particular ray would stream down from this source, it would hit Bach sitting in his study with his wig, writing music with a quill pen. And then it would hit Miles Davis on stage in a jazz club in New York. And then it would hit somebody in the rainforest receiving a medicine song.
Wow.
All coming from the same source. And so after a while, this sense of the differences between different traditions started to dissolve, and they all just seemed like different expressions of the same thing, basically.
Yeah, wow. Beautiful. And as a last question, like if your music, if your work could like leave one message behind after you're gone, what would that message be?
I think it would be in two parts. The first thing would be to share with people the value and the art of deep listening. Not simply with the ears, but with the whole being. Listening in music, listening in nature, listening to other people from the heart, listening in silence. There's a profound wisdom that lies in the simple act of listening. When we truly learn to listen, when we open ourselves to presence, and then we open ourselves to the mystery that flows through everything. And then through that, we open ourselves to healing currents. Deep listening, allowing things to unfold even through the dark night of the soul and moments of uncertainty and struggle. And so I'd hope that the music that I have offered to the world through my recordings and projects and collaborations would have, amongst other things, as well as expressing beautiful feelings and carrying beautiful messages, it would act as an invitation to deep listening, and all of the fruits that come from that. And then the second thing, which is connected to that first thing, is I guess it connects to this image of the lotus flower. The lotus flower is such a symbol of beauty and perfection, but also the reason the lotus flower is such a powerful symbol in Buddhist teachings and all the teachings of the Orient is because it comes from the mud. It comes from the dark, cold bottom of the pond. And the lotus flower is a symbol that helps us to understand the connection between this radiant unfolding into the light that we're all seeking for, and the inescapable reality that the roots and the source of this are actually in the dark mud. And so embracing our own suffering as a microcosm of the suffering in the world, and cultivating the capacity to navigate in the shadowlands and to cultivate deep trust in the unfolding journey. And one of the tools that helps us is deep listening, so that the kind of transformation that we're all seeking for ourselves and for the world is, in my understanding, in my experience, the access that we gain to those transformational tools and transformational processes comes when we honor both the mud and the beautiful flower. And so we find that even our struggles become a source of wisdom and beauty and healing and revelation. So I guess through my songs and through my music, those are after all these years, I think those are the themes that everything is crystallized into.
Yeah. Wow, beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing all of this and for taking the time. And if someone wants to find more of your music, more about you, where's a good place to start?
Well, like most musicians these days, you can find all of my music online. But there's a platform called bandcamp.com, which is favored by musicians like myself. You don't need to join and be a member or subscribe. You can access it easily just by going to bandcamp.com, and then you search for all your favorite musicians there, and you'll find my page. And the difference between Bandcamp and another streaming service like Spotify is that you have the option to listen as you can on Spotify, but you also have the option to download and pay for the album, which supports musicians. So that's one thing.
That's perfect.
And I also have a website, which is just adrianfreedman.com. And there's a lot of information there about my projects and all the different layers we've been referring to today.
Thank you so much for joining me on Inner Alchemy. If today's session resonated with you, consider sharing it with someone who might benefit. To explore more or work with me, you can visit my website, georgestuby.com, or you can find me also on Instagram as I am George Stuby. And yeah, until next time, may you stay present and embodied and in flow, and sending you much love.